Hello, and welcome to this lecture entitled HIS 4490 Research Exercise, in which we discuss, at least give you some ideas about, the major essay research report that forms the core of HIS 4490. Writing is in the rewriting, so what I want you to do for this exercise is to revise and resubmit in week 9 a paper that you have already written for another class, preferably your 3375 paper. Nevertheless, choose a paper that you want to revise and then prepare to rewrite and expand. At this point, your paper consists of a title, an introduction, probably a paragraph or a little more, a body in which you tell your story or make your argument, and then a conclusion, and then your footnotes and citations and bibliographic information. What we want to look at now in these components of a revised paper are an expansion of those components to add a few more and to get a good idea about what should be in each of these components. They are title, an abstract that you may not have written ever before, your introduction that we would like to beef up and expand, a literature review that you've probably called historiography by its proper name and that you may have written but you may not have written, the body of your paper, the conclusion which we want to expand and solidify, and then all of those scholarly accoutrements like citations and bibliography. Let's look at these one at a time. The quality of your title, the characteristics of your title should be that it's interesting and descriptive. Now, for a number of years, a catchy title, then a colon, followed by a subtitle was how we titled research papers. You can continue to do that, but it's not absolutely required. The subtitle, which is a descriptive moniker for your paper, is all that you absolutely have to have. You don't have to have any kind of catchy title for this essay or research report. An abstract is a 200 to 250 word summary statement that you usually write after you've completed your paper. It is set apart from the body of the paper, appears immediately after the title, and is labeled abstract. Readers consult the abstract to determine if the paper is useful to them. So writing a good abstract is both an art and a skill that is vitally necessary in today's academic world. Now let's look at the introduction. Of course, the introduction is an essential component of your paper. It has to say what your claim is, and at this point, an analytical paper is what you're supposed to be writing, not a narrative, and we'll discuss this a little more thoroughly later, but an analysis. And in an analysis, which is something of an argumentative paper, a persuasive paper, you are to make a claim, provide assertions, and then support those assertions with evidence. We call this the claims, assertions, evidence model of argumentation. So the essential component of your introduction is the statement of your claim. You have to lay it out. This is also known as the thesis statement. Your introduction might contain a hook, which is that clever little story that you see in many articles that captures your attention and kind of personalizes and sets the tone for what follows. Your introduction might also contain a statement of the problem that you're trying to solve or a way that you arrived at the problem. This is followed by a literature review. And this will be the topic of a following module. This is also known as a historiography. We'll talk about the difference between historiography and lit review also. For your purposes, a lit review is a survey of the literature related to your topic. That is, you read a bunch of the literature related to your topic, and then you discuss the important components of that literature, generally by topic. This gets you into what we call the academic conversation. Where does your information, your claim, your assertions, your evidence fit into an ongoing discussion of this topic that's being done by writers writing at different times? This is what the literature review sets up. Following the literature review is the body of your paper, which is by far the largest component of any paper. It expresses the context in which events occurred. It's a place for you to make your argument by presenting your assertions and your evidence, and many times your evidence is the narrative story that you want to tell, but you can't limit yourself to only narrating a story. The story has to be the evidence of your assertions that have to be true if your claim is true, and you are testing your claim with the material in the body of your paper. This is, of course, followed by the conclusion. Your conclusion must be a summary of the argument that you have made. As a writer, you have to take responsibility for getting the reader to understand the connections between the various things you're saying, the various claim, assertions, and evidences that you provide. A reader cannot look at this and make the connections by themselves. You have to provide the connections to that person. You tie your evidence to your argument, and you tie your argument to your claim. What a conclusion is not is an epilogue. And then they went on and did this. That's not a conclusion. That's an epilogue. It's okay to put an epilogue in. But you have to have a conclusion that summarizes your argument, ties your evidence together, ties your argument to your claim. That is, you've heard said, restate the claim, but do it a little bit different way. It's not an epilogue, and for goodness sake, do not introduce new evidence or new lines of argument in your conclusion. Now, it looks like you're writing a paper in linear fashion, but I suggest that you're going to be writing components of it as you go along, and even though you might write your introduction first, by the time you get to the conclusion, you're going to want to rewrite your introduction, rewrite your conclusion to make them talk to each other, and then write your abstract. Finally, there's the scholarly accoutrement, your citations to sources, which you must format according to the Turabian notes style. I would like you to insert them as numbered footnotes with one or more citations to sources. It's perfectly legitimate to have a single footnote at the end of a paragraph that contains multiple citations to multiple sources of information in the paragraph, separated by semicolons. Your citations should lead your reader to the exact place that you got your information. If you drew your information from a particular page of a book or article or a particular component of the website, there are ways to cite that area. If it's from a chapter in a book, there are ways to cite that as well. Do not use the in-text reference form. Do not put in a parenthetical statement with authors' last names, which many people call the APA or the MLA style. That's really an in-text reference style, and Turabian covers that, but we're using the notes style of Turabian. This is what historians use. Social scientists, humanities people, English people use MLA. We use Turabian or Chicago Manual of Style. Your bibliography comes at the very end of your paper. It is an alphabetical list of the sources that you used, and readers use it to quickly ascertain what those sources were. Your bibliography should contain only those sources that you have cited in your paper. Your paper's too short to have all of the sources that influenced you cited in the bibliography, but not cited in the footnotes. So if they're not cited in the footnotes, don't put them in your bibliography. If you want them in your bibliography, figure out a way to cite them in your footnotes. Format your bibliography according to the Turabian Notes bibliography style, which she also calls the bibliography style. This is not a Works Cited page, so do not use the title Works Cited. This is a history class. It is not an English class or a social science or a psychology class that uses a Works Cited page. We can talk about why the Works Cited page exists the way it does, but we don't use them. Okay, with that, I'm going to end the lecture. And as always, thank you very much for your attention.